everyone, I'm Annalise Tripp, a medical exercise specialist with the Beach Cities Health District Center for Health and Fitness. And today I want to show you one of my favorite self-care tools, self-massage. So it'll help increase mobility, release tension. A lot of us end up with really tense shoulders and necks, especially when we're stressed, hips, especially when we're sitting a lot. So I want to show you a couple ways that you can help release that tension using just either one or two tennis balls or lacrosse balls. I've got two orange lacrosse balls here that I'll use to demo, but you can also use tennis balls if you have those. Another thing that'll be helpful is if you have a nice thick book or even something like a pillow. We'll be lying on our back, so something that can elevate your hips. So we're going to start with the lower body, and all you'll need for that is a chair and one of your balls. And we're going to release your hamstrings. So these are the muscles on the back of your thigh. You're going to have a seat on your chair. Ideally, it's a nice hard surface here. You'll lift your leg up, place the ball at the back of your thigh, relatively close to your glutes, close to your hips there, and then just let your leg be heavy and sink down over the ball. So our hamstrings can get especially tight and knotted up if we're sitting all day. So the idea with self-massage here, or myofascial release, is that you want to find a spot that feels especially tight or tender. So you want to move the ball around a little bit, maybe try out a few different spots, the back of your thigh, until you find one that feels especially tense. And maybe it all feels pretty tense, and that's okay. Then you'll just pick one spot and kind of hang out on it. You want to hold this for about 30 seconds to a minute on each part that we're working here. So once you've found a nice tender spot, you can go ahead and kind of gently do little small motions back and forth with your leg. And try as best you can to keep that leg relaxed. We don't want to tense up muscles that we're working on, because then that'll just add even more tension. So you don't want it to hurt so much that you're tensing up, but just enough so that you can kind of gently feel it melting, but there's a little bit of discomfort at first. So you can move the ball maybe to a new spot, further down, closer to your knee, or closer back up towards your hip. And another little movement you can do if you've found a really tight spot that won't quite loosen up is you can slowly straighten out your leg, engaging your quad in the top of your thigh, and then slowly lower down. Do that about 3 or 4 times. Good. All right, and then let's switch over and do the other side. So again, you'll have a seat, lift your leg up, place the ball underneath the back of your thigh, and first maybe just moving the ball around to a few different spots to get the lay of the land. And then once you think you've found probably the most tender spot, I think I found mine here, it's just a little lateral, a little off to the side, then you'll let your leg be heavy, sinking down into that spot. Imagine it's a frozen pad of butter and you're heating it up, warming it up so that it starts to melt. Sometimes those visuals can really help with myofascial release. And then you can add the little side-to-side motions, and perhaps even a slow, steady straightening of your leg and release. Seeing if you can relax your hamstring just a little bit more with each release. Very good. And then we'll move on to the floor for our next hip releases. So the second area that I want to release today is the hip flexors. So one of your hip flexor muscles that also does external rotation is your tensor fascia lata. And that's a little muscle that looks kind of like a pierogi right at the side, a little bit to the front of your hip. And that one can be quite tight if we're sitting a lot. So to find that muscle, you want to find your hip bone, so that front pointy edge of your hip bone, and then the top of your femur. There's called the greater trochanter. It's a little nubbin that comes off of the top of your femur, your thigh bone. And then right in between those two, if you were to draw a straight line, you'll find your tensor fascia lata. If you kind of work in there a little bit with your fingers, you might feel a little tender spot. So you're going to find that spot with the ball, lie on your side with your knee a little bit bent, and then slowly roll onto that spot, and then bring your top leg in front so you can use your foot as a little kickstand, and then relax your upper body and relax your head. Now this spot might feel pretty intense. In fact, it probably feels quite intense. And if it doesn't, you may not have quite found the spot. So try adjusting a little bit until you feel a really tender, tense spot. It's usually a little bit more towards the front than people often expect. So if we had kind of a pain scale here, maybe it starts at somewhere like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. And in an area like this where it's quite tender, ideally it'll go down to maybe a 4 or a 5 out of 10 in this spot as it releases. So if you can, really try to relax the muscles in your hips and your leg to allow the ball to ease its way in and melt those spots. Good. And then let's switch over to the other side. So again, finding that spot that's almost like where your front pocket might be, in between your hip bone in the front and the top of your thigh bone, or the greater trochanter, that nubbin on the top of your thigh bone. So rolling onto that spot, using your top foot as a kickstand. And relaxing everything, taking a few deep breaths, letting the ball melt into that spot. I'm taking about 30 seconds here. Really trying to intentionally imagine that muscle melting. Imagine the tension getting released. Taking nice, deep, relaxing breaths. Maybe allowing it to melt a little bit more on each exhale. Nice. Good. And then roll on off of there. So for this next release, you're going to use both of your balls here. Lie on your back. We're going to start with working out the piriformis and then also the glutes a little bit here. So the piriformis is a muscle that tends to be quite tight, especially sometimes a tight piriformis can actually cause a sciatica or sciatic symptoms because it can press on the sciatic nerve. So sometimes there will be some juicy trigger points here to work out. So to find the piriformis, it actually attaches right at your sacrum, your sacroiliac joint. So you want to find your sacrum at the base of your spine here, the back of your pelvis, and then you might find these little tiny dimples right at the back there. And those dimples are where you want to place the balls to start. So kind of the inside portion of your glutes, right at the outside of the sacrum. So I can show you here, they're going right about here. So you're going to place the balls right under there. And just like before, you might need to, move the balls around a little bit until you find a tender point. And then kind of let the balls sink into that spot. And then let's add a little shifting back and forth of your knees. and maybe rolling your hips side to side a little bit to really loosen up that spot. And the balls might, roll around a little, so feel free to lift up and kind of replace them. That's totally fine. And then you'll let your knee drop as far down as you can while keeping those glutes and all those hip extensor muscles relaxed. And then over to the other side. That just allows you to get a little bit deeper. Good, and then we can move the balls anywhere around those meaty glute muscles. So maybe bring them a little bit lower and a little bit wider, so your pelvis can now sit on the ground, and then go through that same motion, bringing your knees back and forth. We can collect a lot of trigger points in the glutes, especially from sitting on them all day. So again, you can kind of move the balls around, maybe a little bit more out to the sides, maybe a little more towards the center, and finding any tender, juicy spots to work out. Just slowly letting your knees rock side to side. Maybe if you find a really intense spot, you can kind of pause. I found one right here. And breathe into it. Good. So another area that can get quite tight, especially when we're stressed and spending a lot of time forward, are the pec major and pec minor muscles in the chest here in the front. So for that, you'll just need one ball, tennis or lacrosse ball, and a spot at the wall. I like to use either a corner or a door frame, just because it's a little more comfortable without having to have my face right up against the wall. So you're gonna find any spot here in kind of anywhere from the front of your shoulder across your chest, and you're just gonna lean into the ball at the wall here. So starting anywhere and then just gently rolling the ball around until you find a spot that feels especially tense, just like before. And once you find that spot, maybe there's lots of them, and then just pick one, you'll just lean into that spot. Again, taking some nice deep breaths. Good. And maybe find a new spot and work that spot out. Good, and really try to keep your shoulders relaxed here. Don't let them tense up, right? We want to relax everything as much as we can. So if something's causing you so much pain that it's causing you to tense up, then back off, right? We want to make sure we're staying relaxed. So there's going to be, some kind of painful sensations, but we don't want them to be so painful that we're creating more tension. We want to be able to relax into it and feel it melt away. Good, so then go ahead and switch over to the other side if you haven't already. And then last but not least, I want to show you my ultimate favorite for relaxation, releasing my upper back and the backs of my shoulders. A lot of times, maybe you wake up with like a stiff neck, or even at the end of the day from stress, you feel like you've got a really stiff neck. Sometimes it can even cause tension headaches. These spots are really going to help to open up your upper back, which can often cause that really strong neck tension. So we're going to work on 3 different spots. You can use both of the balls to do both sides at the same time, or you can just do one side at a time if you've only got one ball. This is where we'll also use that book that I mentioned in the beginning. So the 3 spots that we're going to work, and I'll take you through them. First is going to be kind of the top ridge of your shoulder blade here. The levator scap, upper traps, one of your rotator cuff muscles, all can get kind of bunched up here. Then we're going to move to right along your spine, about 3 or 4 inches down, with the balls right next to each other. And then we'll move right between the shoulder blades, right in the middle, right here. So, for that first spot, you're going to lie on your back with your knees bent, and you're going to take your book or your yoga block or your pillow, whatever can comfortably elevate your hips. And you're going to place the balls right at the top of your shoulder blades, just at the meaty bit there. And we've probably all got quite some tension here, so like before, you can kind of adjust the balls till you find a nice tender spot, and then let your arms relax down. And first, just take a second here to breathe and melt into this spot here, right along that top ridge of your shoulder blade. And then you're going to do a little bit of a kind of shimmy motion from side to side, very slowly, very gently, just to help assist that loosening up of that spot. At any point, if you need to, you can adjust the balls back in place or find a new spot. And then next we're going to do a little chugging motion. So you're going to lift your hips just a half an inch off your block or your pillow. And you're going to do a little chug motion up and down, kind of pushing into your heels and then releasing, just to help loosen that up, rolling the balls a little bit up and down. Good. And then relax down. And then we're going to move to that second spot. So you're going to bring the balls together, and they're going to be about 3 or 4 inches down your spine. So the balls are next to each other on either side of your spine, 3 or 4 inches down. And then you can take the book or block away to bring your hips all the way down to the mat. Good. Once you've found that spot, so you're at a little bit lower than the tops of the shoulder blades. The balls are next to each other, either side of your spine. And first, just breathe, melt into that spot. And then you're going to bring your arms up towards the ceiling, keeping them relatively relaxed, and just at your own leisure, move your arms around. Nice and slow, getting into all different angles, still in kind of a relaxed way. But this is going to help to move your shoulder blades around a little bit and kind of massage that area. Good. And then bring your arms down. You're going to press up into a little tiny hip bridge, so lifting your hips up and then slide up, rolling the balls down. Maybe you'll have to adjust your shirt a little bit like me. Roll the balls down, maybe about 2 inches. You might get a little adjustment here in your spine. Good, so they're that right in the center of your shoulder blades. Or well, along your spine, but in the middle of the shoulder blades, up and down. Good. And then bring your arms down again, melting into this spot. And then bring your arms straight up towards the ceiling again. And this time we're going to do 2 motions called protraction and retraction. So protraction means you're going to reach your shoulders forward. So like you're reaching your arms up towards the ceiling, bringing your shoulders forward. And then you'll go into retraction, where you pull your shoulders back, almost like you're pulling your shoulder blades together. So keep moving through that motion where you're reaching up, protraction, and then sliding your shoulders back, retraction. Moving with your breath, inhaling as you reach forward. Exhale as you retract the shoulders and melt a little bit more. And then last, the best part, give yourself a nice big hug. And maybe on the next exhale, allow a little more weight to come into the balls. Good. And then you can slowly take those balls out. And feel how much more space you have in your neck. Feel how much less tension is in there. Maybe let your legs straighten out. Feel how much looser your hips are. And just take a few breaths here for yourself. Just lying here, really appreciating how good that felt. Well, maybe parts of it felt a little intense, but how good you feel now after you've done it. Nice. Awesome. Nice work, guys. I hope you enjoyed that self-massage sequence as much as I did. You could do this every day if you like. Sometimes I like to do it right before bed to help kind of relax and wind down. Sometimes even first thing in the morning if I wake up feeling a little bit stiff. So you can use this anytime when you really want to just take care of yourself. Have a good one.